So, hey everyone, and welcome back to the Makers Podcast. Now, I want to get this right. Our tagline, we're trying something out, Tom. It's for the makers, the creators, and the barrier breakers.
That's all your work on that. So
that's a bit of a mic drop moment, isn't it?
It's good.
It feels good. Hey everyone, for listening and watching, you probably noticed this face on the show, but if you're listening, the genius, or one half of the genius behind Emma and Tom's, is Tom Griffith. How are you?
I'm well, thank you for having me, guys. Good to be here.
excellent.
Mate, you've flown in for Sydney just for us. How lucky are we?
I have a man crush.
That's right. No, I know you oscillate between the two, Melbourne and Sydney, yeah?
Correct.
And occasionally abroad, globally, yeah?
That's right. So I'm down seeing my mother. How nice.
Ah, lovely, mate. And you brought the girls down as well?
They're down for school holidays because their mother's overseas. She's a professional sailor.
Yeah.
So she's over trying to get some work. She has done well. She won the Hobart last year on that boat alive.
Wow.
Rockstar.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's off trying to get some more work. So I had to get us the holidays.
Wow, that's fantastic, man. Todd Pedler, my co-host, how are you?
I'm well and
Yeah?
good to be here and excited to meet Tom because I'm a big fan of the product.
Oh, yeah.
So I think, Tom, we were just talking before we started going live, but keen to understand where the journey began. What was the inception point for starting the Emma and Tom's business, the brand?
Sure. As I was saying before we started recording, I did a lot of work with Pernod Ricard in the UK. In fact, we did the Diageo Pernod Ricard acquisition of the Seagram's wine and spirits assets when I was working in London. So that was branded drinks. So I sort of had that subliminally in my mind, and I'd done a startup called Mongrel Oils, which was a cross-channel media and business services London-based startup. And I was skiing in North America and hopping on the continent in the morning and drinking these sort of green smoothies. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of the aha moment. Start up, branded drinks, and then this drink, well, this is fantastic, and it's not in Australia. And that was probably the same almost day that Nudie started handing out their product for free at Bondi Beach to promote their launch. So we didn't sort of copy them, but everyone obviously had the same idea at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Great. And you started the business alone, you have a partner. What was the nucleus of the company? How many people were involved from the beginning?
Beginning was just Emma and myself. It took us a year to get going, which was a lot longer than we expected, but these things take time. I'd not worked in Australia for almost a decade, let alone in a bottled juice product, so we had to go and find who makes bottles.
Yep.
And then, of course, people who make bottles send them to bottling plants. So you find out where they are to go and find a plant. And, of course, you start with the smallest plant that'll take you because of run sizes and things.
Yes.
Then you do your recipes on the kitchen bench with fruit from the market, and then you start doing them with commercially sourced fruit.
Yep.
And that's all different. You can have Australian mango, you can have mango from Thailand.
Yep.
It can be frozen or it can be pasteurised. So there's all these different variations, and you work out what you like. And then you do your commercial sort of trials, and it tastes terrible. So you keep on doing those. And you're working with guys who are really good in fruit, and that was new to us.
Yes.
One day, one of the drinks tasted a bit funny. I took it across to this guy, and he had a sip and goes, "Yeah, your mango cream," like straight away. So we did all that, and then we did our minimum bottling run in those days was actually only 1,000 litres.
Right.
Now most people today wouldn't look at you for that. It's not worth it,
Yep.
Once you flush the pipes through with water, then you run the 1,000 litres through. That's about a pallet.
Yes.
So we had 4 pallets of juice and no customers. And we had a distributor who I found through, once again, one of my best mates' stepbrother's girlfriend's stepfather, and a distributor. So we went and saw him, and basically with a PowerPoint presentation, convinced him to take our juice.
Yep.
They had a call centre, and we'd been running around Melbourne looking at the nice shops we wanted to be in.
Yep.
So we had sort of a hit list ourselves. So we just went out and started basically, we go door to door. And
Yes.
this is how everyone does it. I mean, Afterpay doesn't appear in shops by magic. They've gone in and sold it to the dress shop. There's no silver bullet. You've just got to get out there and flog it. And of course, we didn't sell everything that we made, and being a short shelf life or fridge life product, you're going to make it again the following week.
Yep.
And you don't sell all of that. And then you make it again the week after that, and you don't sell all of that. So you end up stockpiling a lot of juice, which is pure cash, of course.
Yes.
So we found an event called Round the Bay in a Day, and that Sunday everyone rode their bikes around the bay to Melbourne and back. They all got a bottle of Emma and Tom's juice in their lunch box.
Brilliant.
So then you have 5,000 people who get
Yes.
to see it. Now that's a very dear way of marketing, mind you, because it cost you, let's call it, say $7,500, but you were going to throw it out.
Yes.
So you've got to find a use for it. So it's a bit about making a bad situation better.
Absolutely.
Obviously, these days, with that much money, you perhaps do something on social which would reach a much broader audience. But, this is the days before Facebook.
Well, maybe reach a broader audience, but contextually relevant to people on a bike who are dehydrated
Correct.
and want juice. It's probably a perfect target market. So great strategy.
Yeah, so we just did it that way. And going to the little retailers first, when you have no brand knowledge or the stance, obviously, near here, the Armstrong Street Food Store in Middle Park.
Yep.
Now, in those days, it was owned by two blokes called Nick. And the idea was that you'd go buy a sandwich from Nick and you'd say, try this new green juice, it's fantastic. And you'd buy it, you haven't been advertised at, you think you discovered it yourself, you like it, you tell your friends. The point, I was in the same shop about 2 years ago and they had our protein balls in a jar on the bench. I said to them, we launched our juice here and you still got our protein balls. I said, I remember the business was run by a bloke called Nick, and she's going, yep, Nick's my father.
Oh, really?
We've spanned generations. It's even a sadder note. My dentist in Sydney used to be a waiter at a cafe when he was a student doing Emma and Tom's. So it's a bit of a, cross-generational.
Hey, I want to ask you something. You mentioned before that you were skiing in North America.
Correct.
And you got the thought for this idea. And we've had a couple of people on this show already who have talked about how they've gone and deliberately, without knowing, immersed themselves in a global environment like the States or like Europe, and they've come back with an idea. Just because they've been there and they've seen someone else doing something maybe similar, or just they've gotten inspired. Do you reckon this would have happened if you hadn't have had all that worldly experience early?
No, I heard your recent podcast and I agree with that completely. I've lived overseas in London and Paris and Whistler, and I think it gives you time to think. All these people who are sort of experts on LinkedIn and things don't just talk about thinking. You've got to sit back and think about stuff. I think sometimes the execution piece is reasonably straightforward, but it's the thinking that you have to do to come up with the idea. I'm just reading The Black Swan, which you probably read, and the Black Swan idea is the ones where you've got to disrupt everything. Until you do that, that's the people who make money are the ones who do that. Obviously, anything new has to be either different or better. So to go away, and obviously parts of particularly the UK and the US, I would say in food they're probably 5 years ahead of us at least. Yep. So you do get innovation from that.
Because of sheer market size, or is there other conditions that make it more progressive over there?
I would say market size and competitor breadth.
So when you look at something like McDonald's in Australia that absolutely kills it, yet overseas it's a big brand but it's got a lot more competition, do you think, wow, how haven't more American companies who compete so well with them in America, why haven't they come here?
Because if you use the analogy of our stock market capitalisation, from my last recall, we're like 1.25% of the global stock market.
We're too small.
So we're that
small, yeah.
Why wouldn't you just put in 400 more Shake Shacks in the States rather than coming over here and starting from scratch, not knowing anyone? You do need some understanding on the ground, otherwise you can come here and lose a lot of money because you aren't known, you aren't accepted. And I think another reason that things like, say, this, using the juice example, I'm quite sure Berry or Coke knew of this product, but hey, why bother doing it?
Sure.
It's fascinating about McDonald's. Sorry, guys, I want to labour on this because you're an expert in this space, right? McDonald's feels like it's quite different to how it is in other countries, but they've made it their own in Australia. And because they've either been here for so long or been the first mover, it feels like it's become part of the fabric, and it's become very Australian. Macca's, whereas if you go to America or if you go to another country, the experience at Macca's is quite different. And I just look at it here and I go, wow, they've had it so good for so long. A bit like Coles and Woolies. Why hasn't something just as good come along and really tried hard to disrupt it? Because I know it's a smaller market, but McDonald's here would make a lot of profit, a lot of money, and they don't have a massive amount of competition. So it fascinates me, although it's a smaller market here, Tom, it's also quite a profitable one. Like, we pay a lot for our fast food here, I'm sure, compared to abroad. But why hasn't someone switched on to that? Or has Macca's just gone so far that they can't be competed with?
Well, I know, obviously, you would have heard that Simon Crowe has got big plans to expand grilled into more drive-throughs, which I think is a very good model for them. I saw a chart only yesterday about penetration and growth of those fast food chains in the US, and KFC is just galloping ahead of McDonald's.
Really?
Way ahead. They called them, I think, units, but basically store openings. Yet the Subway have the most, but KFC is growing the quickest. I think if you look at my limited knowledge of the US landscape, there are more competitors. You've got your In-N-Out Burgers, you've got your Shake Shacks, you know. They are coming in and saying we can do a better product. I mean, Betty's Burgers, I think, are a great product.
They are.
And they didn't have that many stores until their PE owner decided to pick them up. I think they would have had 13 stores. And they've gone nuts, and they've got a great model. They've done that. They've done their look perfectly. I mean, all those things you know are about systems. Well, the guys from GYG took about 3 or 4 years to get going because they sort of failed a few times to get it right. But it's about systems, isn't it?
Yep.
Just on that one, I know we digress, but I want to ask you about Guzman Gomez, because that's been topical in the news recently, and they've gone ahead and done their thing with their listing, and they've got quite an innovative guy at the helm who's had experience in other worlds and other verticals. What's your take on the whole process that's occurred there, that product, and how it's managed to grow to where it is now?
I mean, full marks to them. They've done a great job. They've obviously got a model that they can fit into any sort of situation. You know, once again, look at Benny's Burgers and Boost, both owned by the same business. You could slot one of those into every single shopping centre in Australia. You just know it's going to work. And their Boost is quite a small footprint, with 25 square metres. But his burger's a bit bigger, but it's a higher priced sell.
Yep.
So they just know when they buy that, they can just go out and execute it. And it's the same as GYG. They've doubled in the aftermarket, so I don't think you'd be a buyer now. But interesting to watch.
So 20-year journey from the beginning of Emma Tom's, is that about right? Yeah. So, I mean, 20 years later, and for everyone listening and watching who's sitting there thinking about, I want to bring, something in a fast-moving consumer goods market to market, but what are the key differentiators you would advise or provide feedback on someone wanting to launch a product like a juice, in the Emma Tom style or anything else in the beverages market? What would be perhaps the number one piece of advice you would give to someone, a new founder who's pursuing that journey?
I think short shelf life things like juice are difficult. Obviously, if I go and make a pallet of bars out of nuts and fruit and things and protein powders and chocolate, you can store that in your garage for 2 years.
For a while.
And a pallet's worth about 20 grand.
Yes.
A pallet of juice is worth about 2 grand and it goes off in 6-7 weeks.
Yes.
And you've got to have a chilled distribution to deal with it. That's difficult. I think this dealing with the supermarkets, and I like the supermarkets, but I think it's hard. Some people do it better than others. Karen Creswell at Carmen's has just nailed it. David Pryor did a great job with 5am. You've got to deal with the buyers. They own the real estate. They have all the data. So you can't tell them anything that they don't know, and you've got to work with them. And it helps if they like you, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And you want to be innovating the whole time. They want new stuff. You might notice I'm mates with Troy at Nexpa. I was talking to him yesterday. They've just rebranded their kombucha into quite smart, slimline, matte finished cans from the brown glass bottle. Now, a thing happened there, which is really funny, and I don't know the answer to this, but a lot of kombucha used to be in the chilled juice section. All the shoppers started buying it from the ambient shelf, and chilled kombucha section died. Now, I've got no idea. I'm in the industry.
Just a quick question, Tom. What is an ambient shelf for people that don't know?
Ambient is like room temperature.
Yes.
Right, so that's like the shelf where we get most of our stuff.
Where you find your Coke and Fanta and that big, long aisle in all the supermarkets. It's got your tonic water. That's the ambient aisle. Now, I look at the guys who did Fever Tree. They did a fantastic job.
Well, everyone has that with their gin and whatever they have, yeah?
And then watch Schweppes, who are just market leaders.
Right.
And all of a sudden they came and said, no, this is now more human. It's a more genuine product. And they valued the company on TAM, which you'd know about from your SaaS times. TAM is the total addressable market. So the valuation was gained by saying, well, Fever Tree are only in 1.5% of appropriate bars and supermarkets in the UK, and they're this big, so what if they were in the other 98.5%? And that's how they got their value, and they've done well. They got it into El Bulli in Spain, and the owner or the chef at El Bulli sort of socialised the fact that they were now using Fever Tree, and it went nuts.
Yeah,
that's a really good example.
Yeah,
and now there's been so many Me Too's. And sadly, one recently went into administration. It's hard, and you've got to manage a lot of things being small. And being small, you cop all the blows. If we ever had a problem in a bottling run and something went wrong, and the bottling plant was 2,000 k's away, somehow it was always our fault. You just got to suck it up.
So what do you do to maintain passion for a biz 20 years in? I mean, a lot of people will say, I love business. So as a result, whatever I'm doing, I can get into it. And you've had multiple. This is just one. But how do you maintain passion or reinvigorate that 20 years in, say 10 years in, when you're like, all right, we need a fresh, input of energy, or how do you get through those times when you're like, oh, my business, I love my business, but I'm not as energized by it. Like, how do you reinvigorate that?
Well, I think business is like staying fit. You've got to keep on working at it.
You do.
And I know everyone likes to quote Warren Buffett, but yeah, he made the comment I read just recently that the ones who do the best are the ones who are always a little bit jittery, and what can go wrong next, and they're on guard. And I've got a mentor in Sydney called Roger, who's fantastic, and he said, the thing really is in business, it's very rare where you go, isn't this all nice and cosy now? It's just coasting along beautifully. Because the minute you think that, something major goes wrong.
Right.
And it'll be your CFO resigns.
Yes.
Or you have a recall, which is a disaster. We had a recall because we released a product that would have had 20 sets of eyes over it, over its evolution. And it goes into Woolworths nationally, or Coles nationally, and it didn't have the 10-cent return in South Australia on it. And I tell you what, they are so good at recalls, those guys, because they're at fault too. So this stuff is off the shelves and in landfill within about 8 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, 40 grand later. So this is the problem. So I think you've got to be always on guard, always thinking what's next. Because if you're not, somebody else is. And then, of course, there's the customers, and you want to obviously keep up with what they want as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was there a moment in the business where you hit that inflection point, where it just started hockey stick moment in the business, or was it just slow, annualised growth over time?
We were slow to get into supermarkets, much to my chagrin, and once you're in there, that is the volume.
Yes.
I mean, a simple stat might be, roughly, you've got a range of 8 or 10 different SKUs, different products, and you do well in either Coles, Metcash, or Woolworths.
Yep.
You'd probably say that each supermarket's worth, say, $10 million in sales to you.
Yep.
Now if you've, like, say, Carmen's, and you've got shelves and shelves of products, and Carolyn, once again, has just done a great job, you've got more than that.
Yeah.
It's work, it's all.
Yeah, it's work.
How important is branding in the process? Because I think anyone watching and listening, they're either going to know that they've seen Emma and Tom's before, or if they were to Google it straight away, they go, oh, yeah, I know that brand. But was it a quick process, like coming up with a name and then settling on the brand identity, or has it evolved and taken time?
We've made one error, and we've never told our consumers what we are. So whatever you in your mind you think we are, you've made that up yourself. We haven't addressed it and told you what we are, which is a failure. Brand identity, you can spend weeks doing those brand identity courses, and if you're a car, are you an Audi or a Volkswagen, and all that sort of stuff. And I think you've got to just sort of get on with it a little bit. And if we are in a shop next to a bank, our customers work at a bank. If we're near a daycare centre, our customers have young children. So it's pretty hard to splice it. Yep. You do need to have some idea, otherwise you can direct your marketing or any spend in quite the wrong place, of course.
Yep.
But I remember thinking the originality of naming the brand after two people, male, female, it felt quite original.
Well, not really. It's Ben and Jerry's, and every single winery is named after the winemaker.
Well, no, but from my perspective, it feels quite simplistically clever, and it sticks.
Probably because we are simple.
But you know how a brand sticks, because I can tell you about one, and if it doesn't, you won't remember it.
True. So,
I think you're talking down a little bit the work that's gone into the brand, but was it a moment where you go, oh, okay, well, why don't we just call it after our first names? Or did you give some thought to that? Were you inspired by another brand that had done something clever as well?
No, we basically talked it over for 4 or 5 months, because we had that year to get them to launch, so we didn't need to nail it down too quickly, and we just decided to keep it simple for that reason. Mm-hmm. We were there was a bit us up against the bigger brands and businesses. Back in those days, Doug Shears owned Berry and Alison Watkins ran it. We thought, well, they can't do Ali and Doug. So it was sort of a foil to that sort of thing,
Yeah. And talking of competition, are there any war stories you want to share where, competition was fierce? And protecting that shelf space in Woolworths is paramount. Was there anything you can share that we would love to know?
Well, probably brand, because once again, during the time that we've been around, you've had the whole press juice phenomenon, which involved getting out of bed at 2:30 in the morning and pressing juice that wasn't pasteurised and having to deliver it, and we sort of thought that was going to get boring after a while, and it did, and they've all fallen really away. Berry and Coke have all released what they sort of call their own versions of super premium fruit juices in those times, and they've all fallen down. We had distribution in vans going to all these cafes, and that was, I suppose, a beachhead for us.
Yes.
It was a beachhead for us until COVID happened, and then we thought, well, we're so diversified, we're in 3,000 different cafes and they all closed. So that was a problem.
How'd you get through that?
We hadn't done enough in the supermarkets, which was a fault. Once again, we've made mistakes. So we got through it and got into supermarkets pretty bloody quickly.
I love hearing this, honestly, because it's like you could have easily just gone, oh, well, it's been a good run and COVID's the macro effector and it's curtains. But so you said you got into supermarkets super quick. Well, you wouldn't have been the only people trying to do it. How'd you do it?
Well, the brand helped, obviously, and myself and another guy up in Sydney went and saw Tom Griffith, who's the buyer at Woolworths, and he gave us some time, said, right, you're going to trial in 4 supermarkets.
4?
4 as trial.
Wow.
And they obviously just, you put the stock in and they want all the stats because they've got all the scan data.
What's the deal breaker for a trial to be successful?
If it's on an ambient shelf, let's say it's a pack of rice, I'm guessing they'd want to be saying 4 units or 6 units per week per product. Mm-hmm. In the fridge, which is obviously more expensive real estate, and of course the freezer is more so.
Yep.
The fridge, they'd be wanting to see sort of 8s and 10s at least.
Yep.
Now, we beat that. That's not an awful lot. It's not that challenging, but that's their target.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's almost like you've got that advantage of the effect of, oh, wow, I didn't realise Emma and Tom's was in the supermarket now. But let me flip that and ask you, is there ever instances where all of a sudden going to supermarkets with your brand that's been in upmarket cafes, there's a worry that it might cheapen it or make it look a little bit more commoditised because it's in that, accessible to everyone area now? Did it ever feel like, that might make the product feel less exclusive?
No. I'll be the first to argue against that because the same cafe's got San Pellegrino decorating its walls, and that's in the supermarket stacked 10 high, as it is in Costco and Dan Murphy. Yep. Then there's the ones who say, I want to be the only stockist of your product in this lovely little seaside town. And it's like, well, sorry. And the more people see it, the more they feel they've got permission to buy it. Mm-hmm. So it's better. And now, an Australian living in a city would probably walk past one of our bottles in a fridge in either a Coles or Woolworths or a cafe once or twice a week. So, they've got to know what it is. Yep. So they see it, they think that's good. And they've got to have the emotion. Back to the old adage that no one ever bought a car using rational thought.
Yep.
So in our case, it's I'm a good dad, I bought this juice for my daughters. Or I feel good about myself, I bought this healthy green drink for my lunch. Mm-hmm. So it's back to the emotion driving the purchase.
Yep.
How do you have the conversation when you finally get a product in a supermarket around what price you should make it?
I was just going to ask about price. Pricing is I'm going to hijack that question, but how important is pricing when you're launching a product? And how do you deal with different, market segmentation? You've got cafes and you've got Woolworths. I mean, how do you play evenly across both those camps? And how hard is it to get that right?
I mean, Coles and Woolworths demand a certain margin.
Yep. And
they get that from the price on the shelf minus the cost of the product.
Yep.
And then they'll charge a rebate off the invoice as well.
Yes.
So they take it in 2 hits.
Yep.
And on average, broadly speaking, they want about 50%.
Yep.
And then they want you to promote once a month. If you're not, your competitor is, and that does drive sales. A good example of that is the muesli bar category. Mm-hmm. There's about 4 different main brands there.
Yep.
Kellogg's, Uncle Toby's, Carmen's, Number 4. And they literally are one on promotion 1 week a month. So
do you all get given you different months?
You don't want to be on promotion at the same time as your competitor. So you are obviously, you help model that. But in the muesli bar category, really, people are buying this. I think that's buy the special because many goes into lunch boxes. It's rationalised well. It's a third the price, and it'll give the kids some variety. So no one cares. That's what the brand's in. But and then volume. The more volume you have, the more you can afford to promote as well, I suppose.
So the supermarket takes 50% markup.
Approximately.
So arguably, you're both making the same amount of money on a product, and they're not doing much.
Oh no! Arguably, they're making
more.
A lot more. Yes. You're not going to be making 50% yourself.
No.
Wow, it's fascinating to learn about this, isn't it? Like, because you can't argue with the real estate and the exposure and the benefit that comes from the volume you get in a supermarket. All right, so what I want to know is, once you're at that level of volume and you're serving Woolworths, Coles, where can you notice economies of scale across other parts of the business or products? Can you make more money to be able to do more in other areas all of a sudden? Or like, what's the benefit of once you're at that volume with your brand?
Easy. You need that volume to have the platform to then innovate and launch new products that you hope to be a success.
Yeah,
And
gotcha.
let's face it, some of them won't be. So you've got that platform, that margin platform that allows you to do that.
Yep.
You can't do it too much, of course, because you wipe out your own profit, but it gives you the launch pad to launch new products. And ideally, in the supermarkets, you hold your ground. If one of your, say, 8 products isn't selling so well, you switch it out for a new one. You don't lose your slot.
Yes.
And then you hopefully, as you evolve, and they have different sort of rotation of buying and new product placement, you turn the 8 spots into 12 and into 20, etc.
Yep.
But yeah, that's once again takes time and some strategy and working with the supermarket. You're best to be working with them and being up with, once again, side by side, launching things together because it's in your mutual interest to do so.
Yeah. So from the beginning, was the vision always to land in the supermarkets, or what was the go-to-market strategy?
You have to.
You have to.
Because, I mean, as somebody said a little while ago, I mean, why would you? You're serving 8 million households. You'd be crazy not to do it.
Sure. Yep.
But, it's hard to get in.
Yeah. So starting at the grassroots level and going door to door with the cafes, obviously, establishing a brand at point of sale where it makes sense. Where I'm in a cafe, I see the beautifully different coloured, containers in the refrigerator, which is how I found the brand.
Yeah.
And then later in the supermarkets. How do you price going from grassroots to, scaling up to a supermarket? Price change over the time in those first few years, or
You've got to get your price right when you go into the supermarket, because if it's not right, you're going to have a really hard time moving it north.
Yep.
Very hard.
Yep. And do they have a sort of a ceiling where they'll work out? They put you in a category and go, well, for juice, it's the greatest we'll pay for will be X.
They all have, in every different product category, really, they have a good, bad, or best.
Great.
So obviously in juice we're the best because it's premium, it's full of whole fruit, it's cold filled, yada yada. So if there's 2 other brands in there and one's a bit bigger and one's a bit smaller and they're both $4, well, you're going to have a very hard time to argue anything but $4, aren't you?
Yes.
So you're going to control your input costs to extract your margin.
Yep.
So you did a whole bunch of different stuff earlier in your career, and you've been an entrepreneur ongoing now for over 20 years. You've got 2 beautiful teenage daughters now, and you've got some pretty influential parents, your late father and also your mum still with us now. Give me both ends of the spectrum. I want you to tell me about the impact your dad and your mum had on your career and what you're starting to notice with your daughters and the hope for maybe them doing something entrepreneurial as well.
Yeah, I mean, my oldest daughter has started doing business studies, and she did a case study. This is not the proud father moment, because I would have told her it was rubbish if it was. But it was better than stuff I've seen from some big 4 consulting firms. Well, seriously, she got interviews with the CEO of made businesses it was about, and she did surveys, and it was structural, and it made sense.
Yep.
Dad was a good business guy, and he died last year, aged 93.
Wow.
Good innings. So it was very sad, but also sort of as much a celebration. And what was not lost on me one iota, he pulled 400 to 500 people to his funeral, which is not bad given most of his mates have left this mortal coil. The most common comments of Dad were, whenever I saw him, he was very kind to me. So, you aren't taking that Lamborghini with you, but that's what's left. It was quite telling, And they came from quite a few different sort of parts of his life. Whenever I saw him, he was very kind to me.
So what did he do, and what did you take from watching him and immersing around him in your career?
He always treated people exceptionally well, very well. Even if you go out for dinner, he'd want to know the waiter's name and the whole carry on. He was very good with his own staff. He ran a truck retail business, and I don't think he particularly loved or disliked truck per se, and he couldn't have serviced a truck if his life depended upon it. But he liked people and he liked being in business.
Yeah.
And he enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And did it well, and in doing so, once again, in doing it well, he grew and got bigger and expanded.
So we all hope that our children will find a passion and find something that takes them, everywhere they want to go, and as long as they're engaged and passionate, we know they'll be happy because we've all spent time working in our life. But what do you hope for them to do? And are you a big subscriber to the whole university thing per se, or not necessarily? Or are you more along the lines of, hey, go and try multiple things and find and fail and iterate? And what do you hope for them to do as they progress and try to find a passion?
Look, I hope that they just have that they're nice people, they're kind, again. They are definitely inquisitive. I think being sensible is quite a rare thing these days. We spent some time in the car a few years ago. I listened to an investor call from the States about drone technology. It was for sophisticated investors, minimum spend $250,000, and it was going through all the technology, because drone technology, commercial drones have the same requirements, laws, etc., as flying a 747. Yep. Very expensive. And this call went for an hour, and it hung up, and I hear from the back seat, that sounds risky. I'm like, it's 100% risk. It's all risk. They listen to the whole thing.
Well, I thought you might have got for me, it's a no, I'm out. Shark Tank moment.
It's bloody hard, because think about it. Who's going to buy you?
Yeah.
Amazon, Walmart,
right,
Boeing. You start to fall away pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a tough one. Yeah.
You've said who's going to buy you, and that concept in business for a lot of people starting with the end in mind, and often, it's all got to be worth getting a payday and an exit and someone buying you and acquiring your business. Is that something you subscribe to, or that you mentor other founders to really make their mind up on if that's the end game for them or not, and being clear on that?
It doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be, I think. In the referencing drinks, Cooper's Brewery, Bundaberg Ginger Beer. They're still family owned, have been for a long time. And if you put it together and run it well, and any offspring get a job if they are worthy for that job. Otherwise, you hire for the skill base, not for the bloodline. I'm sure of that. But if you can generate something which makes good money, the business I came across, Rickle Point, I can't obviously name, they've got $15 million in the bank. They're quite a small business.
Amazing.
Yeah. They've got that because they've made profit.
Yeah.
Boom. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So all this stuff about EBIT, our business is fairly leveraged. So when people talk to me about EBIT, I'm like, no, we're net profit. Yeah. Because interest is an operating cost for us.
Yes.
It's how we've structured it. That's life. And I think to go into say I'm going into flip is the wrong way to go about it.
Yep.
Yeah. No. Fair point. I think that's cool to hear. I mean, it's like so many other things we do in life. If you focus too heavily on the end destination and there's no enjoyment or attention paid to the journey right now, you miss out on so much.
Yeah, and to your question, university or not, I've said to my daughters, you do what you want to do. If you want to become a chef, become a chef. I am not pushing you straight down that, commerce, law, arts pipeline. If you want to do it, great, I'll support that. But, they're intelligent, they're smart, they'll work it out.
Yeah.
I went to a meet the psychologist breakfast at my daughter's school, and one mother said, my daughter, she gets straight A's, but she crams. The guy's gone, fine, let her cram. She gets straight A's. And if it stops working for her, she's clever. She'll work out a different way of going about it. Yeah. I'm not this sort of person who wants them to be sitting in their bedroom doing mathematics the entire time. That doesn't work either. I think having a broad view of life and broad experiences is as important.
Same for us. I mean, we've got 3 teenagers and they're all, one's finished year 12 and she's on her gap year and she's just working in retail, learning about the world, dealing with customers and meeting the public and interacting with the public, which is something they don't learn at school.
No.
And she comes home and she tells us stories which are quite wild in some of them, and I think she's turning 20 next week actually. But I thought that is the best experience you can have for the type of personality she is than rushing off and doing an master's degree or something that, school has basically engineered most of their thinking to doing. And she said, well, no, I want to earn money. And I want to work out how the world works. And we thought, fantastic. Fine. And our second is he's more academic, but he's thinking, well, what am I going to do? I said, well, you have to decide that. We'll support you whatever you do. But the world is more sophisticated and complicated than it certainly was when I graduated. Yep. But so I'm on the same page. And I think, if anything, learning from the world, interacting with the world, the younger you are, sets you up on a path that's much greater than coming out at 26, 27 and then going and work for someone and finding out, wow, it's really like this or it's really like that. So kudos to you, and that's the same approach we've taken. So
I'm big on the fact that if you don't help them learn and understand and have self-awareness and everything else. And if they don't get it, the world teaches them a much harsher lesson.
Absolutely, yeah.
As well.
One last question for you. You've been so generous, and thank you for coming on the show, because we love to highlight people that have actually made stuff, products, things that have really been successful. And this is a recognisable business and a ripper. It's a great one, Tom, to Emma as well. So I want to ask you, what was it that you wanted to be when you were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old? And when you look back, should you have stuck at it and become that?
Good question. I think I was in year 8, and the question went around, what should life be? My answer was fun.
Wow, cool.
And it doesn't mean you take your foot off, but work's fun. I like work. We all found out during COVID, not working is as boring as hell.
Yes.
And you definitely can't be on holiday or having lunch out every day, so work's good.
Yep.
I like to have a fun, constructive work environment with good people and to bring people on.
Yep.
We've got, once again, referencing Record Point, one thing that the directors, Michael James and myself, almost like the most is bringing these people on, and they get very well paid in banking. They work very, very hard, but they're in front of pretty sophisticated businesses. And seeing these boys and girls leave university and sort of 5 years later, being sort of especially very experienced seasonal bankers, it's a big move. These guys are 24, 25 years old, and they'll be spending half a day on the phone to a big public company CFO working on the numbers.
Yeah.
So watching people improve and, so I suppose, reach their full potential.
Yep.
Wonderful. Great
Tom
message.
Griffith, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.